Hello viewers, and welcome to the first of what I hope will be many videos on this channel. Today I'm going to be giving you my new world review. Let's start with the grind. Now, the grind in any MMO is an important part of the gameplay, and there are a couple different ways of grinding levels in this game. The first of which is town boards and faction quests. Now, during the early game, you're going to spend most of your time in 1 to 2 pretty small areas, gathering the resources and things you need. Wood, rawhide, stone are going to be important for you. Gather them when you go out, come back in and turn them in. For the town board refreshes every 30 minutes, and if you're running town boards on 2 towns at once, you can get some pretty decent XP rates. The next way to grind is the dungeons. Dungeons become available at level 25, I believe, for the Amrine dungeon, and level 35 for Starstone, 45 for Depths, and 55 for the higher level, 55, 60 for the higher level dungeons. Grinding dungeons can be very good XP rates, but you need a group of people, and you need a surplus of tuning orbs to get into the dungeons. The third way people are grinding in this game is by grinding elite areas with high-level enemies. Some places enemies spawn repeatedly and quickly, so you can kill them over and over again for a long time. All in all, the grinds are not too bad. I've been leveling just doing questing and the occasional town board, and while it is slower than the above mentioned methods, it is just more my pace. Now we're going to move on to the combat. The combat in the game is very hack and slash, kind of roguelike. The ranged attacks, whether they are with magic or with arrows or bullets, are skill shots, so there's no tracking. There's a lot of AoE circles to put down on the ground for healing and mage. If you are using a melee weapon, your weapon does need to connect with the enemy to deal damage. So if you're trying to crowd control, you might want a great axe or a sword, whereas if you're trying to do single target damage, a rapier or a spear might be better. All in all, the combat feels pretty tight. Definitely in the PvP, it's a little bit janky, but that could be due to latency. That could be due to just the game being new and people still learning about PvP tactics, but it does feel a little undefined or unbalanced, if you will, when you get into the PvP. The third thing I want to talk about is the map. The map in this game is beautiful. I'm not sure if they marketed it as a next-gen game. I know that it is not really optimized for the current generation of graphics cards, but even with all that, it looks beautiful. Whoever did the lighting and the clouds and fog effects should get all of Jeff Bezos' money, in my opinion. They went above and beyond, and the game looks absolutely glorious. Now let's move on to the issues, starting with the launch. At launch, there were a lot of server issues. There were a lot of queue time issues. Personally, and it's my own fault for joining a populated server, but I experienced queue times of up to 2.5, 3 hours. And I know people experience queue times even longer than that. At one point, I was in the queue and I was position 2,111, and the servers only hold 2,000 people at a time. So I was, I had to wait for everybody on the server to log off and then some more people to log on and log off again for a spot for me to open up. It was a long wait to play. And on top of that, it was not helped by the fact that people were using macros and things like that to stop themselves from being logged out, so they didn't have to deal with the queues. They could walk away and go sleep or go to work or go eat and come back, and they'd still be logged in and ready to play with no queue time. The second thing is, beyond just the little bugs of, some objects are not interactable with. Sometimes there's some UI bugs and stuff like that, occasionally getting stuck in a place. I personally think that the issues are mostly in terms of balance and mostly in terms of you can play up till about level 30 by yourself, mostly, and and not have really any issues. But I was playing as a tank, and when I got to a tank healer, and when I got to level 30-ish, it started being impossible to play solo. I switched to DPS, and it didn't help. I tried going just straight tank, and there's places where you, even with this main story quests and stuff, you need other people to help you to be there, which it's not a bad thing, but sometimes it's a hard thing because people aren't necessarily willing to come help. Communities on MMOs can be very toxic. And also the trading system, the market in the game is not very well set up and leads to a lot of confusion and a lot of price gouging and a lot of just random chicanery. It really makes it hard to figure out what, if you're trying to make money, what you should be doing, for how long, when, and if it'll still be profitable by the time you get back to sell your stuff. So in conclusion, I would give this game so far a 7 out of 10. I'd say I'm a little bit over halfway through the storyline. I've experienced quite a lot of the things this game has to offer with crafting, gathering, combat, dungeons, bosses, and the real question is whether it's going to be able to keep attention, keep the attention of the player base. The world effectively is run by PvP groups, or groups of people who PvP. That's how you capture and take over areas. And at least on the server I'm on, since the launch, only 2 places have been lost. Now, as more people get to level 60, I expect to see that number rise. But if you are not a PvPer, to a decent extent, you are at the mercy of the PvPers in this game, because they control the towns, they control what crafting stations and amenities are leveled up inside the towns. And if you're not part of deciding that or swaying that, then you're going to be subject to the whims of some potentially toxic people, or just people who don't care about PvE at all, so they won't upgrade the cooking station and things like that, things that they don't need because they don't want it, because it doesn't matter to PvP. So if that's something you're okay with as a PvEer, then go right ahead and do it, but just be aware of that going in. I've heard a lot of people describe this game as 3D RuneScape. I disagree with that assessment. This game doesn't hold a candle to the grindiness or the complexity of RuneScape. The world is not as immersive. It doesn't, this game doesn't really have its own ambiance, which is one of the drawbacks in my opinion. It hasn't left really an impression in my mind. It has a lot of good things about it. It looks really good. It plays pretty well. It's engaging enough. But at a lot of times it's really, really boring and not in a fun way. Half the game seems to be a running simulator. And, from a gathering standpoint, most of the gathering materials are absolutely worthless. But the super duper duper low level gathering materials, like flint or game meat you get from rabbits, can be selling for 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 times what the other resources are selling for, because nobody's farming them, and because they're required for practically everything, or a lot of things. And I'm just Amazon needs to do something to address that kind of imbalance in the game, because one thing I noticed a lot when I was leveling, I was a few days behind other people getting this game, but I was running through the low-level area, level 1 to 20, and I'm seeing people who are level 40, 45 just running through, farming all these resources, which makes it, very hard for a low-level player to level up their stats, because, if you're on a populated server, all the iron ore is gone. Unless you're just very lucky, or you go to a random out-of-the-way one that's nowhere near a farmer's run. And usually you have 4 or 5 people competing for these runs, so unless you get on at a very specific time of day when nobody's on or whatever, it can get kind of frustrating to gather resources that should be fairly easy to gather, because they only put iron in the low level areas, so all the high level people come to the low level areas to mine iron so they can level their stuff up, and that leaves the low level players scratching their heads going, well, I guess I could buy the iron I need to complete this quest, and it just I would say that if you're not max leveled, or if you're not with the leveling curve on your server, that it's very easy to get left behind, or stuck in the dust, or be at a serious disadvantage when it comes to certain resources and certain aspects of the game that are being dominated by a few small groups of people. And then on top of that, you have people using, bots and macros, which happens in every MMO. But you've even got the aimbot people in here shooting at people's heads with muskets. You've got fishing bots and wood cutting bots and stone cutting bots that are and flint gathering bots that are just ruining the prices of things. They're selling gold to people, and it just I would have thought that Amazon would have considered these things before launching their game, considered how they were going to deal with it, if they were going to deal with it at all, how things that they could be proactive about before release to actually prevent some of these things from happening. But they didn't seem to give a crap. They didn't even give a crap about people running into corners endlessly. They barely gave a crap about that. I still see it happen all the time because people are smarter than Amazon's stupid anti-cheat system. So those are my thoughts. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Should have more videos coming out weekly or so, roughly weekly. I also do a podcast with my buddy Robbie, is FYE, it's called the Rob and Moof Experience. We should be releasing our first episode later this week. Catch me on Twitch at Moofburger Monday through Thursdays, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern. And have a wonderful day.